All right, ladies and gentlemen. So this is going to finish out our World History 2 information. And today we'll be looking at important people of the 20th century, meaning the 1900s, the later part of the 1900s, as well as some ongoing conflicts that have happened in the late 20th century into the 21st century. All right, so to begin, first person is Miss Margaret Thatcher. She was a former British Prime Minister, and she would be bringing in a lot of free trade and less government involvement in business for Great Britain. And she would actually increase the relationship between the US and the British during her time as Prime Minister. This would also be during the presidency of Ronald Reagan. Right? She showed that the UK still is a military power to be reckoned with in something called the Falkland Island Wars, whereas basically the British versus Argentina. Right, and there she is, also known as the Iron Woman. All right, in India we have Miss Indira Gandhi, not related to Mohandas Gandhi. She would actually increase relations between India and the Soviet Union during the Cold War. She would bring a nuclear program to India, and here she is. Right, Mikhail Gorbachev. We've talked about him already a little bit, but the policies of Glasnost and Perestroika, opening up the Soviet Union to more democratic ideas. The fall of Berlin is going to happen under him, and he is the last president or premier of the Soviet Union, and that is how we get the modern day country of Russia. Right? He's going to ensure that there is a peaceful transition from a communist regime to democracy in Russia, and there he is. Now, Deng Xiaoping, this guy, he was in charge of communist China, and he is actually going to bring in a lot of reforms that actually help save China from collapsing by opening up the economy to more capitalistic ways of being managed, which actually is going to increase exponentially their growth economically. The economy is not communist, but the government is. All right, and there he is. Now, some conflicts in the world right now. So there are a lot of challenges that nations face when they are trying to develop and become, better. Some of them include, migrations of people. We have ethnic and religious conflicts, new technologies and how they're being implemented, if they're even being implemented. So talking about migrations, we got refugees and other people. Refugees, these are people who are forced to leave because their home country because of things like poverty, war, natural disasters, or they're just being persecuted because of ethnicity or religion. A lot of countries don't welcome immigrants in this way because they take away jobs and services from the people who are born and citizens of that country. So it can create a lot of hostility. Think about some of the issues that America has with immigration, and that is basically your answer there. Migrations of workers into European cities, kind of similar to what's going on in the United States. We have people who are wanting to come here and work, whether it's legally or illegally. And Europe has been a big destination for immigrants since World War I and World War II were over. Now, some conflicts in the world. There are ethnic and religious conflicts. I think that one's pretty safe bet that you guys know already. But some specifics of these conflicts. In the Middle East, we have a conflict that's been going on for generations between the Shiite and the Sunni for who's got the right version of Islam, essentially. Between Arab and American, that's basically what's going on right now in places like Iraq. Control over oil and waterways. Those are big ones. Israel and Palestine. Basically, since 1948, when Israel was granted land as part from Palestine, they have been in a constant struggle for who gets what land basically ever since. And a lot of it deals with who should control the city of Jerusalem, which is one of the most religiously relevant cities in the entire world. Now, one that some of you, I would not be surprised if you have not heard of, is the issue of Northern Ireland. This one dates back mostly to like the 60s through the 80s for more recent things happening. Basically, it's Irish Catholics versus Irish Protestants. It's been going on relatively since the 1922 time period. Bunch of counties in Northern Ireland, they wanted to basically stay a part of Great Britain when the rest of the country became independent. And this area would be known as Northern Ireland. So when you're looking at a map of Ireland, the northeast, there's like a chunk that's always a different color on maps. That is Northern Ireland. That is the disputed area. And for a long time, up until the late 90s, so a good 75 years we're looking at, it was constantly between, Protestant believers and Catholic believers. We have a group called the IRA, the Irish Republican Army, that would constantly be attacking and terrorizing Protestants and military targets for the British. And it would not be until 1998 when a shaky but fairly strong standing peace was basically come up and basically has made everything better. In 2009, the IRA tried to start up again, but it did not last. It ended very quickly. Some more in the Balkans, that area that's like north of Greece, that the country of Yugoslavia, which was one of the satellite puppet countries of the Soviet Union, would break up into all of these different ones: Slovenia, Croatia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Montenegro, Macedonia, Serbia, Kosovo. There would be issues of ethnic cleansing there, where different ethnic groups would be slaughtering each other. It would take the UN a couple of years to settle the craziness going on there. In Africa, we have the Rwanda genocide, where the Hutus and the Tutsis engaged in a civil war and slaughtering each other. They are two different ethnic groups in Rwanda. The Hutus are the majority. They are, by nature, they are a darker skinned group of Africans, and the Tutsis are a lighter skinned group. And the issue between them primarily dates back to colonialism, when the Europeans who controlled Rwanda had the Tutsis, the minority, as basically a group that helped them run the country and dominate over the Hutus. So there was a lot of resentment and animosity between these two tribes. All right. We're also going to see in the Sudan a good amount of things happening there. Discrimination against non-Muslims and other ethnic groups who are not Arab in descent, or who are not Muslim. So there'd be some pretty bad stuff going on there. Starvation, disease that was brought on by people. All right, in South Asia, we're going to also see in Sri Lanka a bloody civil war between Hindus and Buddhists. And that wouldn't come to an end until the early 2000s, and that went on for some time as well. All right, one of the other issues for the coming into the modern world, we have unequal access. But unequal access to what? Technology. Technology is the way you make your country grow, and like there's a lot of technology out there, no matter what type we're talking about. If we're talking about computers, if we're talking about medicines, if we're talking about transportation, But it all might be out there, but not everyone has the ability to get a hold of it. The access is what is limited to underdeveloped countries, which is why they continue to fall further and further behind other countries like the US or Great Britain or Russia or China, right? So this can be stuff like genetic engineering to help out with medical issues, stem cell research, all right? Also, different levels of economic development, population characteristics, different social conditions. So, between developed and developing, geographic location plays a major role. So, for instance, do you think a country that is like on the water, has access to sea routes, is going to develop faster than a country that does not have access to the sea? The answer is yes, they will develop a lot faster than countries who don't have access to the sea, because those trade routes are how new ideas and technologies spread, go a lot faster than over land. Right, economic conditions. So social conditions as well, literacy and healthcare, all of those things. Like if you have better literacy and healthcare for the people of a nation, it will tend to, you know, develop a lot faster and the people will thrive more. All right, this map right here gives a little breakdown of what countries look like as their level of development. So the most advanced economies, meaning countries as well, primarily are Western nations like United States, Canada, most like Western Europe, Australia, New Zealand, Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, countries who have access to like democracy and capitalism as their form of economy. Countries that are in transition, ones that are moving towards that method, they're the ones who are next in line, places like Russia and Eastern Europe. But less developed countries, they're kind of moving in the right direction, but they still have a lot to do. And then we have the least developed. These are the ones that you kind of may as well be back in the Middle Ages because of how slow things are moving, because of how poor the countries are. All right, economic development and the rapid growth of population, they are having impact on environments. So we're seeing economic development happening with the environment and rapid population growth, but they will have some issues because pollution becomes rampant. And we're going to see loss of habitat for animals. Therefore, the ecosystem of countries are going to change dramatically. And we're going to see climate change as a result. You know, factories and more people, you can put more carbon monoxide in the air. We get the greenhouse effect where, you know, more heat is being trapped in the ozone layer, making the temperatures rise, ice caps melting, all such as that. All right. Some social challenges that we face today. We have poverty. There's a big gap between rich and poor, and there are a lot of poor. Poor healthcare in a number of places in the world, places like South America, Africa, the Middle East. We're also seeing illiteracy, the inability to read and write in a lot of these countries as well that are lower down on the socioeconomic scale. Right? Famine. This is basically disease brought on by lack of food or the ability to grow crops. Right? Migration, people leaving areas, that causes big social challenges because how do you account for these people leaving countries in the countries that they're originally from? So like a lack of workers, they're not able to do as much because they don't have people who are able to do the jobs they need done. And for the countries that those people who leave are going to, what do we do with these people if we don't have enough jobs for them? Right, in migration, this is how we get refugees and also the like distance workers. Right, and other stuff with the environment, the need for raw materials. So that's how we get a lot of the destruction that happens. So some of the things that happen is interdependence between nations. Now, is that changing the way the world works? Yes, yes, it is, because more countries are relying on one another for their survival. Right? Rapid transportation, fast communication, computer networks, it all is tying us together, and that is how this is all working. Right? Multinational corporations, like these big world encompassing businesses, things like Microsoft, Apple, Amazon, they have ties all around the world. Right? International boundaries, kind of, sort of, not meaning as much as they once did because of these multinational organizations and businesses and ties between countries. Right? This is how we get stuff like the European Union. People in the European Union, they can move more freely between those countries than they can to countries that are not a part of the EU. Right? Other organizations like NAFTA and the WTO, they all are a part of this as well. Now, one of the last things we will be talking about is terrorism in the world. That is a major conflict that is happening and has been for the last 20 years. So some individuals choose to deal with the inequality of their countries by use of terrorist activities to basically try and get the word out and to try and force the hands of other countries to help. But what is terrorism? It is the use of violence and threats to intimidate and coerce for political reasons. Basically, do a bunch of crazy stuff to get people to do what you want them to do. Right? One of the big causes is religion. And some examples of terrorism, of course, we're going to see international terrorism. Like in Munich in the 1970s, there was the Munich Olympics, where Palestinian terrorists held the Israeli athletes hostage and killed them all. The 9/11 attacks on the US back in 2001, and different car bombings. This was real big that the IRA did. And suicide bombers, that's something that was really popular with the terrorist attacks in the early 2000s, as well as airline hijackings. That was real big in the 70s, as well as how 9/11 happened. Those were airplane hijackings. Roadside bombs, the IEDs, that's more stuff that was happening when we started deploying troops to Afghanistan and Iraq in the early 2000s. And what was America's response to all of these terrorist attacks that were happening? We increased surveillance, like people's right to privacy was looked at again, in an increase in airport and waterside ports was amped up a lot, extra security there, and passports being more and more necessary. Like before 9/11, 2001, you didn't need a passport to go to Canada. I went to Canada as a kid back in the 90s, and I didn't need a passport. My parents didn't need passports. But now, even if you're just having a layover at the airport in Canada on your way flying from like Virginia to Alaska, you need one. Right? We also get what is the Patriot Act. That is basically the government has the ability to listen to our phone calls and read text messages looking for key words that might raise some red flags, like, ooh, they're talking about something bad. maybe we should listen to this whole conversation to make sure it's nothing nefarious or something really bad going on. All right, that's going to do it for this. And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed it. I will talk to you guys later.